Dennis, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
Hey, what's up, Brian? How are you?
Good. So I see that you've been to our town a little bit, spending some time in Tuscaloosa.
That was a phone call. So, no, I'm trying to get there, and I think I will soon. But some of that was for another piece I was working on. But, no, that was a phone call.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, because I've got a lot of questions, and I want to dive into the article. But I'm just curious, what was your main takeaway from visiting with Nick Saban?
Just his description of events after the SEC championship game. There was a lack of ownership and togetherness, I think is the way he termed it. And at first it surprised me, but then I thought that could be nothing more than a reference to the Lane Kiffin drama. But I don't know that. You know, I blame myself. I should have followed up and asked that, but I didn't.
Yeah, it was something. We had Lane Kiffin on yesterday, and it gave us a lot of things to think about, especially reading this article. He mentioned that to you as far as ownership. He mentioned that again today at a press availability for a couple of minutes at a golf tournament. That ownership seems to be a new word, but we're on May 17th. Nick Saban is still not over the Clemson game. I think it's pretty obvious.
No, and I specifically compare this to the 2010 season where Alabama had the temerity to go 10-3 after winning the 2009 national championship. And much the same as this offseason, he just kept, hammering it home that there wasn't this togetherness and there wasn't the work ethic and there wasn't. I go, only at Alabama can you go 10-3 and everybody wasn't rowing on the same oars. And this seems to be the same way. The difference is, you lost by 4 points with a second to go, and played one of the great games of all time and went 14-1 and won 26 in a row before losing. So it doesn't suggest that there was this, breakdown in the Alabama program.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that one play or the multiple plays that got Clemson down, if that doesn't happen, a lot of the offseason has changed. I mean, Alabama's gearing up for what would be 3 in a row. That's never been done. I mean, think about the narrative that would be much different. Instead, we're going back and questioning the best coach in college football history. I mean, it's funny how that works, and pretty unique how we reflect on that one game, that one moment in time.
Yeah, well, I think what you just said, I think all that's still in play. The greatest coach of all time conversation is still to be had. But,
sure.
I think all that's in play. He brought up something that I thought was fantastic, and I went back and checked. There was a period in the third quarter where Alabama went 3 plays, 4 plays, 4 plays, 3 plays on offense, and actually scored 10 points during those short drives. But he said that sort of thing had a cumulative effect on the defense in Clemson running 99 plays and tiring out the defense. So I went back and looked at the play-by-play. In fact, Alabama ran more than 4 plays only once in the second half, and that was 6 plays, and that may have been on the last touchdown near the end of the game. Alabama held the ball for less than 10.5 minutes in the second half. So to say that, as I've written earlier this year about it, to say that those 99 plays were cumulative, I think is clearly the case. But I didn't know until going back and reminding myself and checking the amount of dominance and the way Clemson held the ball in the second half.
Looking at this Prostyle concept that we think Nick Saban is going back to, if you listen to him, it's obvious they're going to have some spread tendencies. But I wonder how much does that really have to do with putting more pressure, because those spread, it's up-tempo. You don't take a lot of time off the clock, as you pointed out there in the editor's note. I wonder how much he tired out his defense now makes him think back of going back to more of a Prostyle concept.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, look, there's anybody who runs a spread and runs tempo, there's ways to control the clock. You get up big in the fourth quarter, and you don't get up to the line quite as quickly, and you run 30 seconds off the clock before you snap the ball. There's Rich Rodriguez has been copied at Arizona. You run slow, you run medium, and you run turbo, depending on the time, distance, and score. So there's ways to do this. I don't necessarily know if you need pro passing concepts to hold the ball more. I think it's the fact that if we're talking about this specific instance, this was a legacy defense. This was a forever defense that, all of a sudden in the championship game gave up 35 points. It was choking everybody off. And I think sometimes you just have to tip your hat. You tip your hat to Dabo, you tip your hat to Deshaun Watson and Mike Williams and Hunter Renfrow, and just say, hey, you guys are better than us. Because we'd already seen it the year before for large swatches of that game in the first meeting. Clemson was better, at least offensively.
You've also asked the question, is it a quarterback battle going through August? I know Nick Saban is denying that right now, and yeah. I get that. We had Lane Kiffin, as I said yesterday, and he recruited both these guys. He went through Jalen Hurts throughout the season. He picked out Tua Tagovailoa as the next quarterback here. He said that he doesn't see how you cannot play Tua Tagovailoa here on the program. I'm just curious what made you go there and help me with the conversation.
For my own edification, I just wanted to make sure. I mean, I saw and read stuff, and I wanted to make sure this wasn't a battle going into August. And when he told me what I gathered, it's Jalen's job. Now, it's one thing to say that, and then another thing to say Tua is going to play. That's two different things.
Sure.
And a third different thing is Tua even coming to Alabama, knowing that there's a realistic possibility he could be a backup for the next 3 years. So I didn't read into that anything more than I think was written that Jalen's a man.
You think about this when you look at these talented quarterbacks. I have to ask you, as far as roster management, is this the biggest roster management issue when you look at this quarterback? This is uncharted water. I think even Lane pointed this out yesterday, to have two young hotshot quarterbacks. And then you have to manage these guys. It's not like running back where you can get them some carries, linebackers, you put them on special teams. This is going to be an issue not just this year, but moving forward, because it's hard to make me believe that Tua came here to sit on the bench for 3 years.
Yeah, and I wrote about it earlier this year. Tua's situation really goes against everything in the modern college quarterback culture. You're either starting or you're departing. I mean, how many guys do we see transfer after a year when they don't see any future in the program? Sure. And let's not forget, Alabama lost 3 of those guys after Jalen developed, or while he was developing. So, and that's not to say Tua won't transfer, but as it stands right now, he seems to be all in, to the point that his family is talking about moving to Tuscaloosa, and the brother was going to sign with Alabama, and they're absolutely in love with the place, and we're doubling down on their commitment to competing and trying to win the job. It just goes against everything, at least in that top end of quarterbacks, that come. It's just, there's no, you're brought in there to play right away. And if you're not, and if you're challenged or you get beat out, you go somewhere where you can play right away.
Yeah, like I said, this one is a little tricky as far as a roster management. Yep. How do you handle this when you look at it from Nick Saban perspective? Let me ask you, did you see a different Nick Saban, a little more energy? I mean, a little bit more focus, because he's always used the phrase, I hate to lose more than I like to win. Did you see a different tone of Nick Saban?
No, I mean, I think it's about the same.
Okay.
I think what you're asking is, how are they approaching the 2018 class as far as quarterbacks go? If you're recruiting somebody right now, what are you telling them? When you get here, Jalen may be here for 2 more years, and Tua may be here for 3 more years. So I'll leave that up to them. But yeah, it is a little bit of a sticky wicket right now.
I want to also move to another conversation. When you go back, and you wrote about this, and we talked about it yesterday, as NCAA zeroes in on college football sizes, survey shows very inconsistencies. Let me help us understand this. Is Bob Bowlesby once again taking another shot at Alabama? Help us understand the focus, I guess, that's really on the Crimson Tide.
No, not on this one. No, the alleged shot, the veiled shot at 97 staff members from the conference call last month. No, in fact, he hadn't even, the document I linked to the story, I don't think he'd even seen, because I was able to obtain it, and it showed a very cursory beginning of a staff size study to the point that it was at best inconsistent and at worst inaccurate, to the point that they listed Alabama with one strength coach. Well, the NCAA did. Well, we know that's not true. They have the five allowed, just like everybody else. So, take that with a grain of salt. I think the news was that Alabama wasn't number one because of inconsistencies like that. And, they admitted, the NCAA admittedly took this quote unquote research after looking at the web. They looked at bios and pages on, team pages, and that's what they came away with. So to say that Notre Dame, which was number one on that list with 45 staff members, has the biggest staff, I think is probably inaccurate. And I think Alabama having 31, because of the example I just told you, we know is inaccurate. So I think that they are going to continue to dig down on this. It's going to be a year-long process. The powers that be know they face possible legal challenges if they try to limit staff sizes. But I think it's interesting. It's something to keep an eye on.
Dennis, when you look at it, when you say that people are complaining about the staff size, is it executives? Is it the athletic directors, president? Are coaches complaining that this is an unfair advantage?
Yeah, there's a lot of rumbling in the coach community about competitive advantage. In other words, my school can't afford to do 5 guys. How am I going to hope to beat this other school that has 25 guys? And I don't know. Look, I don't know if that's any different than Alabama being able to build a better indoor facility than Middle Tennessee. It just is what it is. But when you start talking about competitive advantage, then that gets the interest of NCAA Oversight Committee, which is frankly developed into a pretty powerful committee and has Dan Mullen sitting on it, the NCAA Competition Committee, and then any legislation that comes out of that finds its way up to the NCAA Council for approval. So, yeah, I how is this different than Alabama having a 100,000 seat stadium and Stanford having 50? I don't know if there is a difference, but they're going to try to find out.
Let me also go back to another couple of conversations here within the article, tying some of this NCAA legislation together. You also talked to Nick Saban about the early signing period. I know he's been talking about that, but you point out something here that your quote is, that means a high school coach is going to be in the same position we are now with Fournette and McCaffrey. They don't want to play in their bowl games. What's to say some high school kid says, we're out of the playoffs, I'm not going to play anymore this year, I'm going to Alabama, end quote, Nick Saban.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. That's something I hadn't heard him say or anyone else suggest before, that, hey, signing day's here, and this year it's December 20th, by the way. You sign, you're in the middle of the playoffs, and there are only a few schools at that point that are playing state playoffs. I think Florida, Texas. I don't think Alabama's still playing then, but around there. I'm not going to play, but look, if you're a high school player, I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison to compare a Sun Bowl, risking your professional career in a Sun Bowl, which is what Christian McCaffrey did, as opposed to a state championship. I think in any measure, that kid would be playing for a state championship instead of saving his body for a school he hasn't enrolled in yet.
Dennis, looking at this early signing period, looking at the high school coaches being blocked from campus as far as working camps, or if you're hired, then you're blocked for 2 years. How much does that show the big disconnect between the NCAA committees who make these rules and the guys doing the groundwork, the coaches around college football?
Well, some of it is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The other part of this is, look, some of the coaching profession, all these rules in the NCAA manual, and the reason why it's so big is someone or some people have thought a way around the rules to create an advantage. And that's what's happened here. And one of the biggest concerns, I will say this, in the NCAA is the third-party influence. And that's what they worry about with the high school coach, or enticing a kid to sign, obviously, because they hired their high school coach. So that's where that comes from. They thought they had got, in fact, I think they did have the same rule in basketball. So that precedent exists. I think that's all that is now the case in college basketball. So this doesn't come out of a vacuum. It comes out of there. The difference being that the high school coach in basketball has been basically cut out of the recruiting process and has been for years. In college football, obviously, you still go through the high school football coach. They are still a valuable resource. You know, there are plenty of guys who would like to get help in their career by working a camp. In that sense, yeah, they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, but apparently too many schools have abused that privilege and use that to entice recruits. That's the only way I can explain it, I guess, right now.